Hey there, welcome to the Stormwater World podcast. After 10 years in the stormwater industry, I feel like I've only scratched the surface of all there is to learn. I believe there are a lot of people just like me who are curious, but we're all just so busy. So I'm going to ask the questions so we can get the answers together. My name is Ty Garman, and I'm your host. Join me as we learn about what is happening in the stormwater world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Stormwater World podcast. I'm excited to have a friend of mine here, Mark Wharton. He's president of Stormwater Professionals Group out of Houston, Texas, which is awesome for me. I live right down the street from him, basically. In Texas terms, I actually live a couple hours away, but that's Texas, right? And so today we're going to talk about stormwater in Texas. Specifically some things going on in Houston, and then we're going to travel over to San Antonio and Austin and get Mark's perspective on a lot of things, Texas stormwater. So Mark, welcome to the show. Appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks, Ty. I just want to say thanks for inviting me on, and I'm kind of excited. I do a lot of lunch and learns, brown bags, and conferences, but this is a great opportunity to talk to somebody who has a little bit of knowledge. Most of the people I'm talking to have absolutely no understanding of this. And so it's cool to actually, get to talk to somebody about some things that are really happening in Texas and how that affects us all in a real way.
Yeah. And the gloves are off here, man. Like this is, so a podcast. I'm hoping this could be a casual conversation. I'm get you to say some crazy controversial things as your opinion in the stormwater. And
you can edit that out, people, right?
See if people agree or disagree with it. So, we could edit one.
I'm okay with that too.
But yeah, see, I know people. You don't care what people think. So no. And all joking aside, let's start out with you and the company. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, and what Stormwater Professional Group provides in the Houston market.
Well, that depends on who you ask. I guess if you ask the one of the gentlemen from the city, one of the engineers from the city of Houston, he says, "What's your background?" And I said, "No, music. I have a music major from UCLA." He says, "Oh, you're a creative." Absolutely. I actually found that to be a compliment. Really, I don't think it was from his point of view, but yes, I'm a creative. That's what I do. My background's in music, but so what? Whose background is really in stormwater quality anyway, right? Or anything that people do. They usually go to school and then find something else that they really enjoy. And so that's, kind of what happened to me. I moved to Texas 20 years ago, and I kind of, just dumb luck fell into this industry. My next door neighbor, buddy, he was looking for somebody to replace him because he wanted to move into a project management role. And he was an inspector, a stormwater inspector. So he was inspecting SWIP, during construction. That's what the company that I work for did. And so I came on board having no knowledge, just having a background or maybe a cursory knowledge of construction techniques and things like that. I'm kind of a hands-on guy, always playing, my hands are moving. But so I went and worked for a company and learned all about all things SWIP. And this was almost 17, 18 years ago when that was brand new in Texas. So it was really infancy of stormwater quality. And so I learned everything about SWIP and that, at that company, and then moved into some post-construction stormwater quality. We decided to start a division on SWQMP specifically, and that was baptism by fire. The owner of the company really didn't have much knowledge. Nobody did, really. None of us did, about what that meant and what it really entailed. And so I had to go out, and I still have my some notes that I took, which were some really ridiculous. To today, seem ridiculous. The questions that I asked, like, how do you clean out a, end pipe treatment system, hydrodynamic separator? How often do you want those cleaned? Silly questions that today it seems like that. But at the time, I think even the gentleman that I was speaking with, both from City of Houston, Harris County, they were just as kind of lost about, what the next steps were for this industry as well. And it's grown huge since that. And so about 6 years ago, I left, and almost 7 now. I left and started my own company, and we just do stormwater quality post-construction. So we do inspections and maintenance and repair, and this has to do with detention ponds, hydrodynamic separators. We also sell a couple product lines, and underground detention being one of them. So we're kind of all around in that stormwater quality world. Houston, Harris County.
So you really it kind of puts you in some rare air, honestly. Like, even though you don't have a background per se in, you're not a a civil engineer, and don't get me wrong, like I'm surrounded by engineers all the time. My wife's a PE, so I know what that's like to have somebody, ask you about whether or not, what's your background. But
we don't want
the industry for 20 plus years. So, right. So like that says a lot for,
and we don't want to offend the civil engineer, but
no,
couldn't say that. But you know what? The reality is that I get calls constantly, from civil engineers asking us how to skin that cat, right? How to provide stormwater quality, what the best.
Sure.
And obviously our end goal is really, and even though engineers are our customers, civil engineers, we do a lot of consulting with civil engineers. Our end user is really our customer, right? I have to look at his needs and not necessarily engineers, because to be candid, I've had conversations with engineers that, that went something like this. What are you looking for in stormwater quality, products? What are you guys looking for? And the answer is always the same: whatever's the easiest, right? Whatever's the easiest,
cheapest.
I don't know that I agree with that, because, and I think fortunately we have the ability to think about the owner, because we hang out with the owners more than we do with the civil engineers, right? We are permitting their properties, we're cleaning them out, we're inspecting them monthly, and so we have a really solid relationship with these owners. And so I find it critical, or maybe that's not the right word, but I find that it's for our for our comfort that we make sure that we take care of them, really, that we provide a system that's lower cost of maintenance, lower install cost, and lower upfront purchase cost. If we can do those three things, then I think we're winning, and we're showing value.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about Houston then. So I thought it was interesting in talking to you off, before we press the record button, just about what's going on there on the residential side, that now in Houston, and of course, maybe it's my own ignorance, I don't know, I don't think this is going on nationally by any means, but that in Houston, they are going to require now on the residential side, they're going to require detention. Like if you go to do some sort of remodeling, put in a pool, et cetera, right, new builds, whatnot, that you're actually going to have to require detention. Can you kind of explain that and how that's going to affect?
This has become a big deal.
These builders, me as a homeowner, even though I don't live in Houston, you as a homeowner, you live in Houston or in the Houston area.
So I think we have to preface this by understanding that the clientele we're talking about here. This is in the city of Houston, right? So this is within city limits. So most properties that are within city limits are fairly high value properties, right? Especially residential ones. And so the customers we're talking about are those that are fairly wealthy, right? And so they're buying, say, a property that's an older property that has a house that needs to be raised, and we're gonna build a new castle, these giant 4-story, $multi-million. Obviously that client wants a pool in the backyard. They want everything to be beautiful, and they only have, say, a half an acre, quarter of an acre. They don't have a lot of space. The space is, because property, real estate's at a premium in the city. And so you're talking about, let's say, a half an acre site. In the past, if you're, disturbing less than 70, actually today, if you're disturbing less than 7,500 square feet, which is pretty tough to do, because, you're going to have to disturb the whole site really to get a house on there and parking. And, this is going to not require, if it's under 75, it's not going to require any kind of detention. But if you're disturbing more than 65% of a 7,500 square foot lot, which is not hard to do, you'll have to provide 0.75 acre feet of detention per acre. That previous rate was 0.2. So it's almost 4 times the amount of detention. And so in the past, with 0.2, you can usually get that, you can maybe put some swales on the property, or even a small cistern, above ground cistern, something like that. You can usually catch that 0.2, but now it's very difficult. And so really the only way that we see that's viable is underground, is to go underground. And that's expensive. So a lot of deals are dying on the vine because of that. And so, we're trying to help kind of provide that kind of a service. There's also another facet to that, and that's their. By the way, these regulations came out a year ago, so they're. I'm not gonna say.
Is this something that? Yeah, but is this something that's kind of is this all from Harvey? Is this all kind of reaction?
Yeah. The knee-jerk reaction I think from Harvey is to provide require more detention, more. There's certainly several areas that have been dedicated and big projects, high profile projects in Houston that are being dedicated as detention areas. So there's a couple of those. And so, this is all really based on Harvey. So the date makes sense, right? March of 21 is when this really came into effect. Now, combine that with what's going on right now, which is just about a month ago, the city of Houston kind of finalized their low impact. They're really driving the city of Houston low impact development, which is great.
Oh, yeah. Hey, before we jump into the low impact, too, just for anybody that may not know, I mean, of course, we live in Texas, so it's prevalent to us. But 2016, Hurricane Harvey hit Houston, and to give you the magnitude, I think it dumped, I want to say, something like 68 inches of water on the city in a 48-hour period. I mean, it's a ridiculous amount of water in a very, very short amount of time that nothing could have stopped. Like, no designing. Like, you don't design for a 1,000-year storm, right? So that happened, and then so a lot of things have come since then, and that's what we're talking about now. And then I just want to kind of close that loop there. But go ahead, what you're saying about the kind of the low impact development side of things.
Well, to piggyback off of that, we also, before Harvey, just for anybody that doesn't know, in Houston, we also had 2 500-year rain events in 2 months, 2 or 3 months. Yeah, we had a couple 500-year rain events that were pretty significant, obviously, 500-year rain events. I know in my neighborhood, we lost a lot of oak trees because the roots get saturated and they just fall over. My wife lost a car in that event, in one of those 500-year events. So, yeah, it was pretty significant. I think it was just, not just the one 500-year event or the one Harvey. It was the culmination of all these storms in such a short period of time. I think within 2 years, we had all 3 of those storms happen. And, it put the spotlight on where we're going to put this water. Now, like Kai said, the amount of water that came down, I don't think there is a pond big enough to detain that amount of water. But what the city is doing and the county is doing, Harris County and City of Houston, is helping alleviate those low-lying areas, those low-lying residential areas, older residential areas that need some relief. And they're getting that relief by these detention basins that are being installed. And a lot of them are wetlands, which is really kind of cool too, because it gives parks and recreation areas for the people that live around there. So yeah, it's a really cool deal. Now, what's going on now though with low impact is that's the kind of the next push, right? Is Harris County, City of Houston, they all really would like that low impact. In my experience, commercial, light industrial, it's just not even a reality for them yet, right? But for these single families, one of the key drivers of this program is some reimbursement for capital costs. So if you use low impact, I'll give you an example. We have a property that we're looking at right now. It's a pie-shaped kind of lot, and the reality is this is in City of Houston. They want to put fancy house on there. Obviously, the owner wants a pool in the backyard and all this fun stuff. Well, the detention rate that they're required, this 0.75 acres, is really going to kill them in costs. The only way to really do this is to go underground. And so we're looking at, an underground system, but that doesn't provide any low impact. That's just an underground detention system. Combine that though with maybe a porous paver system. Even in this instance, the owner wants to reclaim that water for drinking water, not just gray water, but like treat it.
They're going all out.
Oh yeah,
that's a little.
Well, this is an environmental attorney, so she's
that's above and beyond, right? Okay,
right. I think so. And so in this case, though, if you have some low impact techniques going on here, you can get those costs reimbursed, and so offset some of the cost of construction. So the city of Houston is trying to make it incentivize it a little bit, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through to get that. A lot of people.
That's it. Yeah. So do you see a lot of that push on other areas from the gray to green infrastructure?
Never
So
seen.
is it affecting your business, or are you
I
doing anything
it's a
to?
new idea. I think it's a good idea. I think in the future we're going to need it.
Yeah.
Because water is going to come at a premium, especially if you have, say, you're in the city and you don't have a well, which most of these houses don't have a well. They're fed by city water, and you're, subject to whatever that cost is, and that's an ever increasing cost. I think I read an article. It was probably had to be 10 years ago. It's a long time ago, right? And it was T. Boone Pickett saying water is the next oil, and he was absolutely right. Water is going to be the next oil. And, maybe we won't need oil anymore.
Oh yeah. That's a whole nother podcast, sir. Yeah. So before I got in this industry, I didn't even realize the commodity that water was, like pumping it here to there, and the industries and people keeping water on reserve, and the amount they pay to some of these organizations just to have access to water, not to even use it, not to even take it into their plant per se, but just to actually have access to the water. That's pretty
well. You see, recently, I think in California, they realized that they've realized it for a long time, but they're going to run out. They really are going to run out. If things don't change fast. So, I suspect in the future desalination at whatever cost, the only option.
Really, that's kind of scary thought, really. But so let's take Houston. So I know you know Houston inside and out. And let's compare it now. Like I told everybody when we started that we're going to take a little road trip. So let's, the stormwater. Here's the thing about stormwater, as I see it, in my limited knowledge, really is, and what makes it so difficult is because of the nuances from not just EPA region to region, to state, even down to city, just because of the geographic differences. And I'm not even talking about interpretation of regulation. I'm just talking literally because the ground, the way it rains, the terrain, it's just so different everywhere. And that's the same here in Texas. So, and the way people look at their program, or how all those different things just become very nuanced, and it makes stormwater a lot more difficult than I would think it would be, right? Like, in wastewater, we've got that one figured out. Flush a toilet, goes away, nobody thinks about it. Stormwater still 10 years in, and I tell people what industry I'm in, and they're just like, why? Like, what? Like, they don't get it. They just assume, I think a lot of times, that the water goes down, goes in the drain, and then it's all fine and good and everything's great. They don't have a clue. So compare it. Like, so how does Houston compare to a Dallas market or to a San Antonio market in terms of program and approach and the things that you're seeing?
Well, kind of to piggyback off what you said, stormwater being in its infancy and having, the geographical area that's huge. I mean, we live in Texas, where, we have huge differences in the terrain, right? In Houston, we have mostly clay and some sandy soils, but mostly clay. Austin and San Antonio, it's stone. It's all rock there. And so big differences in the way you manage stormwater quality and the way you manage drainage in general. In city of Houston, though, and this is a lot of people, especially if you're not from Texas or you're not from specifically Houston, think that we're in the Wild West, right? That this is an oil town, that's all it is. And that's all it'll ever be, is an oil town. Well, the reality is it's much more diverse than that. And in stormwater quality, city of Houston, Harris County, I think are front runners, specifically in Texas, but they're right up there with what's going on in, say, California and the East Coast and Puget Sound area. Those places have much more intense requirements, right? They want to capture more particulate and so on and so forth. But here, we have a monthly inspection requirement that they don't have anywhere else in Texas, and in a lot of places in the country, they don't require a monthly inspection of this is a post-construction feature, right? So this is, I think for the audience, maybe detention pond is the easiest one to kind of visualize, right? So you've got a detention pond in the back of your commercial property or your school or apartment building, and that pond is usually in the back, right? Because it doesn't generate any income. It's not a water feature. It's a dry pond between rain events. And then it fills up with water and it pays out. Well, that thing, needs to be inspected monthly in the city of Houston, Harris County by the owner. It needs to be permitted annually by a licensed PE. So there's some third party, right? involved in that process that actually puts some skin in the game. The owner also has to sign a couple of forms, one of them being an affidavit that says that they promise that this feature, whatever the feature may be, has been maintained properly according to, there's a stormwater quality management plan, which is, if you know anything about SWIP, which I think at this point anybody that's tuning in here probably knows what SWIP is.
Sure.
The whole idea for SWIP is to limit, to a practical extent, the discharge of silt, sediment, and other pollutants into the waterway, into the MS4, right? Well, the good news about SWIP is it starts at the top. It starts with the EPA, and they mandate SWIP all the way down to the local level, right? And so then the Harris County, City of Houston are required then to kind of manage those programs. The good news is they're across the board from top to bottom, the same exact program, right? So you have to keep the silt and sediment out of the MS4. That's it. How you do it is, whatever, however you want to do it. Like if you want to use silt fence or you want to use hay bales, whatever. As long as the silt and sediment and the pollutants don't get out into the street, out into the MS4. Stormwater quality is a little different. You've got, some requirements that are all over the board. In Houston and Harris County, you can use hydrodynamic separators. You can use standard detention ponds with a trash screen over the outfall. And so in Harris County and the City of Houston, these guys are requiring people to actually do some things to maintain their properties. We go kind of back and forth whenever the Harris County specifically has a new permitting person who will say, "Hey, we want our disposal manifest for an end of pipe vortex or hydrodynamic separator," and we may not have one because we may not have needed to clean it, but they're on the ball. They want to know why. It's not like that ever.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, what do you see? What do you see in those other markets where there's, I don't know, where there's opportunity? Is there opportunity for, I don't know, improvement, or are you looking to actively expand your business there because of how they approach it, or is it just make it harder to maneuver in that market to where it's not necessarily worth trying to expand what you're?
No, we're always looking to challenge, of course. And so the challenge really is this. I'll tell you, and so let me compare then City of Houston to maybe Austin and San Antonio. Those programs have been around for a long time as well. They're pretty well established. The difference is that, and I spend a lot of time at conferences and speaking with new MS4s. So we have phase 1 and phase 2, right? We have the phase 1 MS4s have been around for, I think we were talking about this.
Yeah, 20 over 20 years now, 1990. Yeah.
Right. So these are, communities over 100,000 that were mandated to come in with a storm quality post-construction program. And this was almost at the same time as SWIP. So inundated with a lot of requirements that, nobody had funding for that. And so SWIP became more important. But in Austin and San Antonio, they decided that because of their terrain, because they have a lot of stone, the best approach might be, especially when we have an aquifer in, not all of Austin and San Antonio sit over the Edwards aquifer, but parts of it do. And so they're very, very protective about that aquifer that provides drinking water for those communities. And so they decided that maybe sand filtration was the way to go. And so you can go to Austin and San Antonio in that region that we call the Hill Country, and you can find tons and tons of these units, which are basically a concrete structure that's built usually in the back of the property. Again, out of sight, out of mind. It's not generating income. We don't want to see it. It's not a pretty thing. It's a concrete slope, straight up and down concrete box, big, sometimes in, 100 by 300 feet, some smaller, some bigger. And these systems work much like, if you know anything about fish tanks, aquariums, sand filters, been around for a long time. It's very effective. It's very effective at filtering out things. The problem with sand filtration is it does need maintenance. And for some reason, and the difference being from Austin and San Antonio area or the Hill Country to Houston is Houston requires these inspections that I talked about in this permitting and so on and so forth. This is all required by the owner. The owner has to provide these things. So whether he uses a third party like us or whether he does it himself, which is pretty difficult, because they don't have the knowledge, right? You got to do it. Where in Austin and San Antonio, they decided when they started their programs, hey, let's not really put the onus. I mean, we'll put the onus of maintenance on, and the burden on the owners, of course. But our inspection process, our management of this is going to be about every 3 or 4 years. We're going to go look at each site. We're going to make it out to every single one of these every 3 or 4 years, and we're going to give the owner a report. And typically that includes a violation, because if you think about it,
Yes, 3 or 4 years is too long.
My customers, a lot of, you'd be surprised at how many times I'll call up or we'll call up on a potential customer, or someone will call in or whatever. And typically if they call in, they know they have something because they maybe have gotten the notice from the county or the city. But a lot of times when we're calling on people, they don't even know they have stormwater, right? And that's in Houston and Harris County, where you have a bunch of requirements. Think about if you move out to Austin, San Antonio area, where you just see the TCQ, that's the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They're the equivalent of the EPA in Texas, right? They may come out once every 3 or 4 years and inspect it, and they're always going to find a violation, because these things aren't supposed to have vegetation growing in, or trees and so on and so forth. But these owners aren't paying attention. They're just not paying attention to it. Most of the time, they don't even know it's there. They don't really know how it functions, and they don't know that it's not supposed to have vegetation in it. And so when they come out and do it and violate them, it's usually, we want to see the underdrain. So now you have to rip out all the sand, dispose of it properly. It's classified as a hazardous type of waste, so it has to be disposed of properly with a paper chain. And then you also have to replace that with a specific sand that's approved by the city or the county. So it's much more hands off, I guess, on the owner's part, but I don't know why. It really doesn't. There's really not a lot of compliance in that realm.
Gotcha. So on that thought, and then we'll kind of wrap up, because I'm wondering, for somebody that does inspections, right? You do inspections. You also offer stormwater quality devices, treatment train,
Sure.
Stuff like that. Do you feel like I guess, I don't know if it's the right term, of maintenance always feels like, to me, maintenance and all this stuff feels like the hidden cost, right? The hidden cost, the cost after the cost, the ongoing cost. And I feel like maybe for a lot of these owners, that it's really on the front end when these things are being presented to them, that maybe that cost is either not disclosed well, or like for a lot of these companies, they do not also do inspections. They don't also follow up behind it. Like, so do you feel like it hurts you sometimes when you're in these very competitive bid situations, and like, hey, you're going to put this in and you're going to have to inspect it, and this other guy, like, I guess you have to really line item that out and look, like, I'm telling you the truth. Like, here's the whole picture, right? Like, do you ever feel like there's like a disconnect there that hurts these owners? Kind of like what you think.
The disconnect is huge, and the reason is we have this uniqueness in that we started as a maintenance company, really, right? But then we also build these stormwater quality management plans for engineers, and they want to know what products to use. And so I have to go out to find the right products for them, right? And so being a maintenance guy, though, I start at the back end, right? I start at the maintenance and what the cost of ownership is, not just the initial cost. And this is where you'll see, and I see it all the time, where you'll see developers, like a company, like, I'm going to use Prologis because there's a giant company right there, a giant property owner, but they have a development arm, right? And then they have a property ownership arm. I'm not sure if Prologis does or not, but we'll just use this as an example, because a lot of these development companies have, they hold their properties. So they have a management team that they have to, you understand how this works. They go and to the management team and say, here's our price per square foot. Here's what we think the market can garner. And then they'll go to the leasing team and to the management team and say, this is the cost of this is what our projected costs are for construction, and so on and so forth. Well, the management team is usually not involved in that. It's usually just the development team and the leasing team. And so the management teams, they're kind of like the bastard stepchildren. They're always left in the dark on these things. And it's upon them, it's incumbent upon them to come up with a plan for maintenance and a budget that was never even projected. And so what I do is I give my engineers, if they're looking for it, well, we do it anyway, but they don't always ask for it, a 5-year cost of ownership, 10-year. And we'll ask the question, is this a flip? Is this somebody just building a flip? If it is, maybe we use the lowest cost system. And I hate to say this, but damn the expense of maintenance. If it's headquarters, if it's our home office, well, let's get you the best system at the best price with the cheapest maintenance. Bird, right?
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, hey, before we wrap up, let me
Let me say one thing, though.
Go ahead.
The problem that our competitors have is that they don't. So they're salesmen, right? They have salesmen, and I'm sure they're great at what they do. Obviously, they're selling products, but they don't know anything about maintenance because they never actually did any maintenance, right? They're salesmen, and so if I hire a salesman, he's going to go out there, she is going to go out there and look at the systems and understand and watch clean outs and watch a pond remodel and so on and so forth, so that they understand the pain that the owner has to go through. And how to be empathetic, right? And how to manage that.
I got you. Makes sense. Well, hey, before we wrap up, I want everybody to be able to find you. I know you're not a big social media guy, so the best way to find Mark, if you have questions for him, would be to send him an email, I'm assuming, which would be at M Wharton. That's M as in Mark, Wharton, WHARTON, at swpgrp.com. That's stormwaterprofessionalsgroup.com. That's Mark's email address. So if you have any questions for him regarding stormwater and water quality in Texas, go ahead and feel free to shoot him an email. I'm sure he'd be happy to visit with you on anything that you might need or ask questions on. And then
the next time,
I guess it's just
Dallas. What to talk about Dallas?
Well,
we need another
got
show.
some cool thought. Oh.
What?
Right.
No,
you hear all those? Okay, all you people out there in Dallas, I just gave you his email address. So
I'll give you the teaser. So we have,
here we go.
Harris County and City of Houston, we have really two operative MS4s, right? So you have two entities to deal with who have their own little nuances, and so that's okay. In Austin and San Antonio, you have 4 or 5. You got San Marcos and Broncos, Austin, San Antonio, and maybe Greed. But in Dallas, you've got 50 something. I think last count 53 plus MS4s. Some phase 1, mostly phase 2, all developing storm quality post-construction programs all over the board. So that, we could probably spend several episodes.
And it's booming there. And there's more and more people. Every day it's blowing up over there.
If you want to know, just look up the city of Frisco on Google. I think it's the fastest growing city in America.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely can come back and you can give us all your thoughts on the Dallas stormwater.
Sure, you want that?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if the people in Dallas do, but I would love to hear it. Mark,
no,
I think you being on the show. What's that?
As everybody, I think Dallas, they're just as confused as could be about that. The engineers. Think about it. As a civil engineer, you have to manage 50 plus different nuances, right? It's the nuances that
Yeah.
The idea is. Across the board is fairly, static, but the way that they manage it.
Sure. And then I think at the same time, don't we need to put TxDOT through there too? They've got their own thing that they've got to do required through each one of the MS4s. And
absolutely.
So yeah, there's a lot of push and pull. Yeah, that's a whole. Yeah, that also is another podcast in and of itself.
Absolutely.
But hey, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, thanks for having me. Thanks again.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Stormwater World Podcast. Do you have something you'd like to discuss? Do you have an opposing opinion regarding something you heard during this episode? Let's talk about it. Click on the link in the show notes to sign up for a future episode. I'd love to visit with you about what's happening and how you see things unfolding in your stormwater world.